Hey guys, how's it going? Gooey here.
And Mossies.
And today we're going to talk about. We had a comment from Fura Takahashi. I'm going to actually bring it closer here so I can read it for a second. But on our last video, they said, in regards to Breath of the Wild, I missed the Dongo and Goma and a ton of other bosses that were in the first game. But I had an amazing idea. What if the Divine Beasts, there were guardians shaped like the other bosses, like a Dongo Guardian, Manhandla Guardian? That would have been a hell of a lot better than 4 Blight Ganons.
100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
One of my bigger criticisms was that the bosses in Breath of the Wild were like reskins of the same boss.
Yeah.
Every one of them is identical. They have a different color scheme slightly, depending on their elemental. You know, the Fire Blight is red, Water Blight is blue, Thunder Blight is yellow,
Mm-hmm.
Wind Blight is, I don't remember, but the color of wind.
Yeah.
White? Was he gray? I don't know.
I don't remember.
But it's like, yeah, some of them had little swords, but it was the same exact look to each one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't give it much you don't really remember them. I thought that idea when I read that was awesome.
Yeah.
It's like the enemies in the game. There's not as much. There's a lot of variants of each particular enemy. Like every moblin, there's like 5 types. Every chew, there's like 5 types of choo-choos.
Uh-huh.
But there's not really that many enemies when you think about it, though. It's just a lot of the variants of them.
There's a lot of the Lizalfos.
Yeah, I think there's 5 Lizalfos, 5 Wizros, 5 choo-choos, 5 keys, 5 moblins.
Uh-huh.
Even 5 Lionels, I think.
Yeah. And we've been comparing the game a lot to Skyward Sword, but that's a game that got criticized for that too.
Yeah.
I would say this is a little bit better than that, in my opinion, but it does tread the same territory.
Yeah, it's. I think the enemies, because they're hard.
Yes.
It doesn't. It's not as bad. I don't know how that really makes sense, but.
And they at first start to slowly introduce you to them. Like on the Great Plateau, I think you're mostly encountering a lot of bokoblins, and then when you first get off, depending on where you go, one of the first enemies you'll see is a moblin.
Not necessarily. If you go north,
True.
you can go to the Colosseum right away, and you can encounter a Lionel.
True. I guess it depends, but
Depends.
realistically, who you can actually take on,
Yeah.
it's the way you're encouraged to go. Same, and then the Lizalfos, and then
In the areas immediately around the Great Plateau, especially on the Great Plateau, the weapons they have are not that strong either,
Mhm.
so they're not going to murder you in one hit.
yeah,
In some cases, not at all. But yeah, they do progress you along. Skyward Sword, you fight a moblin or a bokoblin, then you fight like the technoblins, I think they are the electric ones. Then there's the cursed bokoblins.
yes,
The zombie ones, and then the dark bokoblin. I mean, it's the same. There was not that much diversity. So in that sense, like, it was better in this one. I think it was better, but it was worse with the bosses because of they took the same idea with the enemies and they turned that into the bosses. Not enough diversity, I think, with the enemies.
yeah. A lot of them were pretty fun to fight, but by the end of the game, you're kind of like, okay,
The first time I saw a big moblin, it was like, whoa.
yeah,
The 30th time or 50th time, you're not even fighting them anymore. You're running away because ain't nobody got time for that.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I liked the idea of the Guardians being different former bosses from former games. We could talk about that some, but also, were there any maybe common enemies that you think could have returned from previous games in the overworld? First thing that came to my head is maybe Wolfos. You got Stalfos. You have wolves in the game, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah, I mean there are the ice wolves as well, so it's like sort of like the white wolfos, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of view the wolves as, because those are more enemies, because they'll attack you. Those are not, those unlike like just the, the deer or something.
Mm-hmm.
The Lionels were awesome. It was such a throwback. Finally, we got to see a 3D Lionel. But then there's more like what have become traditional enemies in some of the 3D games that were missing in this one.
Okay.
Deku Babas come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there was any like.
There was like ground Octoroks though.
There were, yeah, but like there were like everything. It sounds weird saying this, but was a little more realistic. Where something like a Deku Baba is not, it's a it's a plant that has a head that bites you.
As much as everything else is,
A Bokoblin has a figure. It's like a monster, and I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching this a little bit, but it would have been cool to see stuff like Deku Babas are nice. I didn't really like the Wizrobe design.
Okay,
but it was cool to see him, I guess.
I liked Wizrobe.
I found myself like getting annoyed by them more than anything. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't many new enemies in this game when you think about it.
Yeah.
We named Octoroks, Keese, Choo-Choos. So there's a lot of. I can't think of any off the top of my head. There were the little stone monsters, like the mini stone taluses.
Oh yeah. I think a big theme they were going for in this game was, while it's all new, was kind of to be a throwback. So I can understand that, but I think they could have maybe had more enemies from Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. There are a lot of great enemies in Zelda 2 that could have been in this.
Yeah, like how about a Gorilla?
Oh yeah, an axe thrower.
Yeah. Well, they threw. They had enemies that threw boomerangs at you. So they had the little Gorias, but
Goria would have been really good, I think.
Yeah, like the mouse or rat like structure of like their look of them.
Oh yeah,
'cause they're sort of like giant rats. That's really what a Gorilla is. So, or even like a Dark Nut would be cool.
Dark Nut, yeah, that's great. They could have definitely included a bit of a mixture of some stuff they could.
I like the variety in like the different types, and in particular the elemental ones. I think are cool.
Yes,
fighting you fight a Keese, but then you see an ice Keese or a fire Keese. It's a little more exciting. In particular, the colored Choo-Choos are fun. But rather, like you got. It'd be nice to see a variety of enemies as opposed to a variety of types of the same enemy. So that would have been cool. In particular with the big bosses as well. Like, how many Hinoxes do you really need to fight? So many Stone Taluses do you need to fight? I mean, rather than having 8, 10, 12 Hinoxes in the middle of the overworld, cut it down to 3, 4, and maybe give us something else?
Yeah. Thinking back on the Guardian's suggestion, maybe some of those old enemies could have also appeared in the overworld. Do you have any old bosses or mini bosses that you're really fond of that you would want to see show up in maybe a future game or DLC even?
You had Fireblight Ganon, you had Waterblight Ganon, but you use ice attack, so you got fire and ice. It's like that's always been a tradition in Zelda. All the way back from Trinix and from A Link to the Past, carried over to like Twin Rova in some of the later games. Some sort of merger of those Ganons. But it would be nice if they were. I hate the designs of the bosses. If it was just like a 3D Trinix like that, like a big monster 3-headed. That would be awesome. And it could be some of. They're close because they have the elemental bosses already. Something like that could be cool.
That's another thing we talked about in the last video. That's just there's stuff to build to in future games if they keep going in this route.
Yeah, there definitely is. But his suggestion, like, I mentioned this in the last video too. Instead of if Fireblight Ganon, Waterblight Ganon, they didn't exist, and the boss of, I still don't know the divine beasts, the names of the dungeons, but like the Goron one, if instead of whatever it was, if it was a Dodongo, and it had elements from what Fireblight Ganon actually was. It's just, yeah, Fireblight Ganon, Calamity Ganon is controlling that thing. He's already controlling the Divine Beast, so why doesn't he just control a boss too? Just to give it some originality with the look. And they've already got the Lionels. It's already a throwback to the original. So, you know.
And if they wanted to tie it into the theme, it could be a Guardian, or it could at least look like, you know, the same design as the structure, you know, something like that.
Calamity Gliok.
Calamity Gliok.
Yeah. Or, you know, I was thinking about it. They could have made sort of like, you know, Manhandle. He's got the 3 heads. And if you remember Manhandle from, like, Hyrule Warriors, that design, it had sort of like tentacles with the heads.
Mm-hmm.
They could have made Manhandle one of the Divine Beasts. And you can, it can just adjust its body and spin the dungeon around.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the Divine... I guess that's kind of the new enemies, because you do fight them before you go into them. You know, you could sort of count that. But that is a good idea where instead of an elephant for the Goron one, what would make sense for that? Well, a Dodongo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to see a 3D, you know, Aquamentus. He was the first boss in the first game.
Aquamentus, Goma.
Yeah. So that would have been that's a great suggestion. They kind of started that trend with Hyrule Warriors with including those old big bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And this being a throwback to the original would have been awesome to see that. We'll see in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure Nintendo will take this genius idea, and run with it.
Right, yeah.
All right, well, cool. Yeah, if you have any other topics on Breath of the Wild you want us to cover, just leave it in the comments, and yeah.
We'll get to it eventually. A lot to cover.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.